Well, what's going on, everybody, ladies and gentlemen around the world, wherever you might be? I am your trusty live stream host, Jay Campbell, and I am joined by my amazing partners, a long time coming of the Divine Light podcast. I have Rebecca Lynn Shaw. Rebecca, what's going on?
How you doing?
It's great to see you. And of course, Michael Jaco, the infamous Navy SEAL who has blown up now all across the internet again for the second time. Michael, what's going on, brother?
Not much, brother. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course, man. I mean, unfortunately, we haven't been together as much because, as of you guys know, and I'm finally disclosing this now. I took Michael's advice and I got the hell out of Dodge. Right, I'm living now in the beautiful town of Marietta, California. Robert Stanley is within 4 miles of my house, so we're neighbors. He's actually been over. I met his family now too. As you said, Michael, amazing place, full of ex-military. Full of red-blooded, conservative, high-value people. There's no crime in Marietta. It's the safest city in the state of California. The entire police force lives and resides within the city limits, which is pretty amazing. So, my family, we cannot be happier. And also, just a real quick message, like every person that I've met in this town, installers, handymen, people at Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever I've gone to, salt of the earth. Good-natured. And by the way, this goes for every creed, race, or color. This nonsensical narrative that's being created by the mainstream demons that black people don't like white people, colored people, or Mexican people, brown people don't like black people. It's all BS. People are still good-natured, good-hearted, kind, benevolent to one another. So I just, it's so clear to me that is all orchestrated, as you guys know. But anyway, tonight's topic to get into the show is going to be based on this book, okay? Which, if people can see it, let me just bring it up here. It's called An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower. And it's written by two amazingly courageous authors, Jerry Marzinsky and Sherry Swinney. This book was published in December of 2019. There's a little bit of a backstory to this that I'll give real quick, and then we're going to go into some very deep points because Rebecca is going to tell us tonight that she knows all of this is true and she can actually verify it from her own experiences in the clinical world of 25 years. But Robert Stanley did an interview with this guy, Jerry Marzinsky, I think in 2010 or 2011, and I could be fact-checked. It might have been 2012. One of my good friends who mentored under me, heard this broadcast. This is when I did not know Robert from Adam, and sent a link to me back then and said, dude, you got to listen to this. And when I listened to it, it was so mind-blowing. I've told Robert this, and he knows this, and he shared this with me and Michael in our little groups, but it was the best podcast he's ever done. And what this guy revealed, this Jerry Marzinsky who wrote this book, was basically what I assumed at that point was the key to unraveling the matrix. Like what was really happening with people that were negative, victimhood, being clinically diagnosed as insane, deranged, schizophrenic, as Rebecca's going to talk about tonight. And again, I was so blown away. And on my path of spiritual awakening and awareness at that time, it was just like this giant magnet for me to just be like, whoa, right? And so, true story, I kind of let it go, but it led me to find and seek out Robert. And that's how Robert and I became friends going back to 2017. And of course, we weren't personal friends like we all are now, but podcast friends and whatnot. And so Robert, he's okay with me sharing with this. He did not go down this path because you guys, he started to get attacked. Okay. By these beings, which we're gonna get real clear about these beings in this podcast tonight. But he was like, "Look, man, I didn't want to talk about this with my family. I just stopped it. There was no reason for me to pursue this." So when this came to me about a month and a half ago, YouTube did you might be interested in, because Robert's podcast was removed, right? But somebody, like the universe does, saved it, sent it to Jerry, and Jerry had it on his channel, and so. About, like I said, a month and a half ago, it was served up in the algorithm and said, you may enjoy this. And so I clicked on it and I was like, holy shit. I sent it to Robert. I was like, Robert, it's still up. He's like, no, it's not. And I'm like, it is. So whoever gave it to Jerry, he had it on his site. And I re-listened to it again. And I said, Robert, this is too important. We have to push this into the ether. I got to get Michael and Rebecca and whoever else wants to talk about it. Can you set me up with Jerry? Can you get me an interview with them? So flash forward a couple of weeks. They finally responded to me on Monday of this week. I've been talking to them back and forth. I told them that I wanted to do a stream to push this into the ether with you guys and then, set it up for them to tell their story because, again, their story is mind-blowing. And, again, I'll just say it one more time. Please go on Amazon and buy this book. It's a page turner. If you're a good reader, you'll read it in a day and a half. It's very, very easy to read. And it will absolutely tell you about psychiatry, what they've done, how psychiatry has created this barrier to people finding out the truth. But, and I don't want to steal your thunder, Rebecca, but Carlos Castaneda and other shamanic teachers have talked about this species for a long time in their books. They call them the flyers. Everybody else knows them as the archons. There's a lot of different names for these. The guy that wrote Stellar Man, John Baines, which is a pseudonym, he called them the archons of destiny. And then, Emanuel Swedenborg, which was the famous Finnish philosopher, poet, all these things 300 years ago, also figured out who they were and what they were. And he talked about how every man has two spirits, one good, one bad. Again, you think of the guardian angel stories we've been heard from religion, but that it's your choice based on your vibration, who influences you. Right. So anyway, it's all in this book. I asked people to write it, but, for the purposes of tonight's show, obviously Michael and Rebecca especially are going to share their story. Again, Rebecca has 25 years, of this. She's dealt with these beings who are attached or involved in the humans that she's been counseling and working with. And again, she has incredible stories. But let me just go to you first, Rebecca. So tell the audience, of course, everybody who will be watching this in the rerun. And by the way, for all the people that are watching right now, we appreciate you guys. Without you guys, we wouldn't have a show. Tell people, what was your first experience with this? And, was it terrifying? What did you think about when this first occurred to you in your life?
Well, let's, just say that I wasn't, I was brought up pretty much with no religion. My parents kind of rejected, their religions that they grew up with because they saw a lot of hypocrisy there. So I didn't really have a, good versus evil and anything about the devil or anything in my life. I was raised basically atheist and agnostic parents. So I had that clean slate. But when I went through my training in clinical hypnotherapy, I attended a conference where there was a man named Bill Baldwin, who's deceased now. And I actually ended up taking some training from him called spirit release work or spirit release therapy. And it was very, cutting edge even back then. Probably this was the late 90s. And it was about entity release or entity attachment. And so I just kind of got exposed to that idea. And it was more just because I was fascinated by it. And then I came across a book by a woman named Edith Fiore. She wrote this book called The Unquiet Dead. And she was a psychologist in San Francisco. And I think I had written down, I was going to say the book description was basically, she talked about just everyday people having what she called spirit possession. And so it could be like you were in a hospital and someone died and then that, that spirit attached to you. Or she talked a lot about people with addictions and how it weakens their aura and then they get exposed to spirits. And I didn't really, it was just, I'm a super curious person. A lot of things I don't believe or disbelieve. I'm just open to it all. And then over the years, you just start believing in things because you just see them actually happening. And then probably about 10 years ago, I was working with a client who came in to do past life regression. It was just this sweet, older, probably in her 60s, Southern lady. And this is a key that I noted over time is many of these people who have these entities attached, they don't, for whatever reason, well, the entities don't like them to get hypnotized. So she's having a really hard time going into the hypnosis. It just seemed like sort of just one of those situations where sometimes that happens. She was very religious. And so a lot of people, I mean, if there is going to be a block to past life regression, it's because somebody's having their own struggle with it, conflicting with their religious beliefs. And so she left. She was the last person of the day. But as we were going through that session, all of a sudden I started getting these horrible like stomach cramps, like ball me over stomach cramps. And
Wow.
I've never had issues like that with, my period or anything. And I literally had to call my mother to come and get me and take me to the emergency room. I felt like I was having a baby. I was breaking out in a sweat. I was just pouring sweat, and I felt just this incredible pain, and I felt like I was going to pass out. And I went to the emergency room. They couldn't find anything wrong with me. I swear the emergency room doctor thought I was just loopy or something, or wanting attention or whatever. And that was the first time it happened. And I suspected it then. And then I had this other man that came to see me who was an artist, but he was addicted to pornography. And I started hypnotizing him. And it was probably a couple months later, the same thing happened to me. All of a sudden, it was just the exact same symptoms. My heart's racing, my whole body went pale. I felt this intense pain in my abdomen, and I thought I was going to throw up. And I literally rushed out of the room and was able to just sort of calm it down. And I walked right back inside, and I said, "Do you think you have an entity attached to you?" And he said, yes, I do. And it's the pornography. And so that began sort of my introduction to it. And I have other stories, but that's, that was the beginning for me.
Michael, in your remote viewing experience, in your, very, very varied and storied Navy SEAL and CIA analyst career, what is your experience encountering, entities attached to people? I mean, obviously, I know you've spoken on my show and past ones about seeing through remote viewing, demons attached to beings, but just share your experiences. Like, what does a person have to do to have one of these things invade them?
So it's an attitude, like Rebecca was talking about. If you're, you're open to things that are like dark, and if you subject yourself to that, then you're opening yourself to possession. And I've once I started seeing, like probably about 11, 12 years ago, when I first had my firsthand experience with a demon. From that point on, I knew when someone was demon possessed. It's like once you encounter a demon, it's like, okay, this person's possessed, that person's possessed. It's pretty crazy when you start to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can even look at a picture of someone. Right. Like I was just recently sent a picture of someone, and you look at that person, and you're like, oh. But I can look at anyone, and I don't care, what's going on with them or whatever. And some people, like, they look freaky, but there's nothing going on with them, But I looked at this guy, and I was like, okay, in this picture, he's clean. Never seen this guy before. Don't know who he is, And so I remote viewed him, and sure enough, he has a demon on him, and pretty good one. And the demon, for the first time I've ever encountered a demon, actually took a knee to me because it knew that I was about to destroy it. And I was like, wow, that's a new one. So I'm teaching this guy how to deal with demons, so I didn't destroy his demon. So I kind of sent him away. I know that guy's going to call it back, so he's going to get some more experience with this demon. But yeah, it's pretty crazy out there.
So, right now. Well, to that point, Rebecca, I want to go really deep with you. I kind of said Michael and I are just going to be the face eye candy for the show, and everybody, we're just going to talk to you the whole entire show because of your clinical experience. But truthfully, the book talks about what happens in the system to people who are downtrodden. Again, and this, Rebecca, from your experience, but a lot of people who turn to drugs and alcohol. Even sugar addictions, right? Like anything that can control, the endocrinology or the endocrine system or the central nervous system of a human being. These beings, like, well, we're going to get to that, but they have a way to like influence the human to do things that they wouldn't normally or otherwise do. And of course, as you know, Rebecca, they essentially manifest as voices, right? These are literally voices that the human being is hearing inside, and they're so good about disguising themselves that the average person who suffers, this malady or this affliction or this, infestation or really possession has no idea. They can't decipher what their thoughts are and what the thoughts are of these malevolent entities. And let me just say before I go to you, Rebecca, that psychiatry, again, this is all explained in this amazing book, but psychiatry has quarantined the thought process. They do not allow people like you, Rebecca. Jerry Marzinsky and Sherry Sweeney are both advanced educational people who worked in the prison systems, who worked in psychiatry, worked in counseling. And every time they ask that question, well, does anybody ever ask about the voices? Are they intelligent? They're instantly, siloed and quarantined. You're not allowed to ask the question because they immediately come back with you're only going to inflame the patient's psychosis worse. And so again, it's never addressed. And so that's why this book is so amazing, is because this is a compilation of these people's 20 plus years in the system, compiling this data and realizing that psychiatry stonewalls them. Nobody in psychiatry in the top of the field will ever address these questions. So again, I won't read it. I'll share it for the next podcast when I interview them. But Sherry Sweeney says that with all of her work, and by the way, she was also attacked as a child. Her dad was abusive, was an alcoholic, tied her to chairs. So again, when you are traumatized, you lower your vibration, right, to a point where these beings or these fiends or whatever they are, these flyers, these predators, these mind parasites come in and take over you. But how did you ever go yourself, Rebecca, when you were encountering these and you started to figure it out? And I know you studied, and read books about this. There's other, obviously, researchers that have figured this out. But did you ever go to anybody like a senior or someone that you mentored under and talked about this? And were you ever told to cover this up?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, I think, what happened was for me is I had a client that came one day and she said, I need your help. I have tried probably everything else for many, many years. She disclosed that she had been raised in a satanic cult. And she had been diagnosed with MPD, multiple personality disorder. And she had suicide attempts in the past. She came to see me and I was like, whoa, I think I might be over my head with this. And coincidentally, synchronicities happening. Another client came into my office who was a Reiki master. His name's Ed Schultz. He lives in my area. And, I was talking to him about it. Is this something I can do with this person? What do I need to know to, protect myself? Because I know, sure enough, I just sensed right away that this person had entities, but they weren't from, her own doing per se. They were from the environment she grew up in. And I'll never forget, he said something to me, are you ready to do this? Are you ready to help this person? Because he said, you can't unsee what you're about to see.
Right.
So we kind of started diving into studying satanic ritual abuse. And I, went to a conference on it. I studied, worked with a woman as an advisor. Her name is Sandra Fecht. She's out of Canada, and she's dealt with these similar things. And one thing I want to say is so Ed and I created this synergy work. Basically, it's like a combination where he was doing Reiki on her while I was doing the hypnosis. So he was running energy to clear as these things were coming up. And I mean, it was just like an exorcism, literally, like the person on the table. And that night, the first time we worked on her together, I had done hypnosis with her, but when we worked on her together, it was like this, whatever was attached to her was getting the double whammy. And I learned something really powerful from that session. I went home that night And literally, I learned that a demon will push thoughts into your mind.
Right.
So they will use your data bank, your memories, to pull up your deepest, darkest stuff. And it's not in somebody else's voice, it's in your voice saying, you know, when you take that bath tonight, you should just slit your wrists and bleed out.
Right. Right.
And it was a little freaky, but I knew that it wasn't me saying that. And that was, you know, that was another kind of turning point. But I was really, really appreciative to have Sandra. I don't think I could have worked with this person to the level I did without Ed, because he's pretty fearless about dealing with these types of entities.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. Let me just read this one thing and go to Michael. So Sherry said, and again, you know, remember she was attacked as a child. You know, she has vivid recall when she was 7 years old, but she said, I finally recognized a one-to-one correlation between the voices attacking the patients and an almost immediate depletion of their energy state. What became crystal clear was that the voices were draining and feeding off of the patient's life energy once their emotional state had been turned negative. So to what you just said, whatever these things do, they literally exist off of the negative etheric energy that we as humans generate, right? So that's what they say to you, right? Like they say, I'm going to kill you, or you need to kill this thing. They just put nothing but lie after lie after lie into your subconscious. And if you're already sedated on, you know, Thorazine or whatever other horrible drug, like a lot of these people that are committed in these institutions and prisons are on, it just puts them into this hopeless funk where they're just constantly being fed off of. I mean, imagine like a, you know, what is that, where that what's it called, where the thing sits on the bottom of the shark or whatever and just feeds off of it forever. I mean, that's essentially what these beings are. So Michael, with your understanding of fourth dimensional beings, reptilians, whatever we want to go, is this essentially the same thing, that that's how these beings literally survive? They feed off of our negative energy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. And I'll bring up, like, when we decided to do the show together, you sent me that, you know, I kind of joked around a little bit, but this is kind of what I do. I says, yeah, you said you're just going to be a pretty face there. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to like set up the protection. And you're like, oh no, you really have to do it right.
Put up a grid of protection. Yeah.
And when you said that, I got chills all over my body. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
So I started, you know, sending out protection. So for anyone listening, I'm sending it out to anyone listening, so I can, you know, we all have that ability. So I did it for this show, and I did it for anyone watching. And for you out there, this is one of the things that you do, because I learned the hard way. So it really cost me my life, but I was put back. So, and that is to protect yourself with love. So love, like Jay keeps showing on his chart back there, is the most powerful thing that you can tap into. And if you focus on, if you have fear, if you see a demon, you think there's a demon on somebody, and you have fear about that, just like Rebecca's talking about, they'll get in your mind like that. So you can't be in fear. It's very important.
Well said. At the end of the book, and I don't want to, like, you know, steal their thunder, but, you know, they give out very distinctive and descriptive ways that you can defend yourself. And obviously, Michael, you know, we say it every show that you and I have ever done together, every show that I've done with you, Rebecca. Be of service, be kind, be forgiving, send out love bubbles, just constantly be a person that practices the golden rule. Now, the thing is that these beings are obviously ambushing / going after, inhabiting, possessing lower vibrational beings already, right? I mean, let's just make this correlation right now, right? We're in a country right now where if you don't know what's going on, it's good versus evil. It's not left and right, or Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. It's good versus evil. That's not like debatable. If you really are of a vibration that can't like think that I'm crazy, or any of us are crazy for saying that, then this is where you are. You know, you have not evolved your consciousness to get even above this line of integrity, as Dr. Hawkins says. And by the way, I think you guys know this, but Dr. Hawkins, and he's dead, but his group, they published his latest book on explaining the levels of consciousness. And I got the book. It came today. I flipped through it. It's absolutely amazing. I've already spoken to like 6 people that have started reading it. It came out on Tuesday. It's only been on the market for 2 days.
Oh, great.
It's a phenomenal book. And every person on this planet should have it, because they really do have to understand, as Michael's been saying and just said before, there's nothing that matters except elevating your consciousness. Pursuing money and making money and having things and living in the money magic system and the matrix, none of that shit goes with you when you physically die. But what does stay with you is the love that you make and the love that you take, right? I mean, that's what happens with the soul level of your spirit. And so I constantly tell people, if they think I'm woo or whatever, and a lot of people do, they think I've jumped the shark. I don't talk about testosterone or being a tough, optimized male anymore. I talk about consciousness, but that's it. There is nothing more than consciousness. And so, why we're talking about this is I think this is pretty important to recognize that if you're vibrating in victimhood, you are food for these creatures. These creatures are all over the planet. As you said, Michael, there's never been a time, probably since the last time that, the flood, that we've had so much darkness and so much evil preying upon the unsuspecting. And again, if you're of an unsuspecting nature at this point and you think I'm crazy when I say this is good versus evil, then you know what, man, you just chosen dissonance. That's why I say in my messages all the time, I say resonance or dissonance. You're one of the two. Choose wisely. So Rebecca, let me go to you. So dealing with these beings as you did, you've obviously been attacked. What did you do? Obviously you learn from the books and from other mentors who've been dealing with this, but what have you done since you experienced these differently to protect yourself and of course your patient?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because some people, it's like Michael just said something, that he worked with that guy and he sent the entity off, but the entity was going to come back because the guy was going to accept him back in.
Right.
There are people I had a client who knew he had the entity, but when he was a little boy, he was physically abused by a family member, beaten, regularly by a family member. So when that entity attached to him, it gave him the force to stand up to that family member. So we were working in the session. It was literally out of a horror movie. The sound that came out of him sounded reptilian. And he's like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so. So he was fully aware that it was there. So, one part of it is whether the person knows about it and wants to let it go or release that part, because maybe there's some payoff or benefit. It was, giving him strength or giving him protection. I think if you are addicted to drugs or alcohol, your aura is just going to be weak all the time, when you say, Michael, so you're not going to be able to fight that. But as far as protection for myself, Ed, the Reiki master guy, I've taken Reiki, but he's just really taught me to be very putting out, boundaries of protection. We use a lot of visualization techniques for that. And, it kind of took me out beyond the whole, everything's all love and light. We want to resonate in that high love vibration, but you can't ignore the fact that other people don't. And that if you get attacked, if you have to mentally put up, perimeters in your energy field to, like he was doing before this session, to buffer those out. And you have to do that regularly.
Michael, let me ask you, and we've talked about this again, but to say it point blank, you have to lower your field, like she said, your auric field, your etheric force field around you, again, because we're all beings of energy, right? That's all we really are. We're in physical meat suits, but we're just energy beings. You have to do something to lower your vibration, again, way down here in these red root chakra areas, to allow these beings to puppet you, right? If you're a being of love and light, the likelihood that one of these things is even going to be around you is very slim, correct?
Yeah. So, I work with a lot of people in combat zones. So in combat zones, the demons are pretty extensive, and they're pretty powerful.
Of course.
So I've even seen some of the people that I work with, get inhabited, and they'll seem like really cool, but I know they're inhabited, and it's really frustrating that, and we're all surrounded, like we can think of the boss as like a real jerk, and yeah, probably inhabited,
right?
But they'll maintain a certain level, it's like they know that if you get out of control, they're out. So I'm like, all right, maintain it, or otherwise you're gone. And so I've told people that I do this work, and I can see their demon try to jump me, and I'm like, whoa, and then I push back on them, and then eventually I get to the point where like they know not to mess with me, but it's a process. You have to stay in those higher vibrational zones, because they'll try and like provoke you and pull you out.
Yeah.
They'll go to other people, and they'll provoke other people to attack you. So you have to be really wary around some of these people, and be careful, who you share your abilities with. Now, what's cool about Rebecca and some of the other women that I've seen that are, involved in this work, you can see, you and I, Jay, we're tough guys, super alpha males, but, with these sweet women that are involved in this stuff, and they're just as powerful as we are, if not more so.
Probably more so, yeah. Energetic.
Exactly, because they know how to go into those realms, like Rebecca was talking about. I had to learn to go in these realms. Mm-hmm. So for women, it's easier to go into that. For guys like us, big alpha males, we're like all physical and down to earth, but it's harder for us to go into these realms. But once you learn to go in those realms and you realize they're more powerful, that alpha male that you used to be, you find out you're even more powerful in these areas. You never go back.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's kind of happened for both of us, that we really walked our spiritual path and really opened our heart, to that kind of knowing. Let me ask you both of this, and again, I don't want to steal the thunder for the next show, but it's just such a fascinating topic. As I was researching in the last couple of days, knowing I was going to bring you guys on, I started, and I have his book, The Occult. Colin Wilson, wrote a book called The Occult. It's an amazing book. But he also wrote a book about this very topic, and it's called Mind Parasites. So there are people in the esoteric community that are very familiar with this. Of course, again, Carlos Castaneda in his famous book wrote about the flyers again, and he called them, he said they were predators. I want to ask you both, because this is a very serious question to me. And I've been telling people, this podcast tonight and then the one with them, I say is going to be a game changer, because very few people are willing to talk about this. Again, Robert Stanley, credit to him, and Jerry, when they did this 9 years ago or 8 years ago, whatever it was. But since then, man, there's been very little talked about this. You can go on Google right now, and search this. There's maybe 3 podcasts on all the internet about this. So we're like the 4th now to talk about this subject. When do you guys think that this species, this predatory invaders, came to this planet? Because my guess is they are literally the party or parties responsible for a great bit of the Matrix enslavement. I mean, they are creating people and piloting people and puppeteering people to be dark and to do all this shit, because again, they eat the energy of trauma and pain and suffering. They're feeding off of this. So imagine how many of them are here. But I'll ask both of you. I'll go to you first, Rebecca. How long do you think this has been going on this planet? Is this a thousands of year thing? Or is this just something that maybe happened in, during the bubonic plague time in the medieval ages, when the planet really shifted into kind of like the dark part of the Piscean age? I mean, do you guys have any idea? I mean, obviously it's speculation, but when do you think this happened?
I think it's been here forever. And something that came to me not too long ago is, remember the movie Monsters, Inc.?
Yeah. Yeah.
And these go around, and the monsters go around scaring the kids and catching the screams in the can, right? So they feed off of their fear.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of wild if you think about that, the premise of that
It
movie?
almost goes to show you that Hollywood is behind it. Again, these these beings control so many sectors and elements of our society already. They make a joke out of it, right, Michael?
Oh yeah, definitely.
But there's, to me, what I perceive is that the demonic or parasitic entities are as varied as people are.
Yeah.
So, for example, I had this one client who was had chronic pain from fibromyalgia. She'd had it for years, and she was coming to get hypnosis to try to get help to ease the pain. And again, it was another situation where she wouldn't let me in. She wouldn't let down. She wouldn't relax herself. And I sensed that what I saw in my mind's eye was this cloud of dark, 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 dense energy from years and years of pain that had become an entity in and of itself. Like I was told by a friend of mine, Seth, who's a healer, he said, love is an entity. It's a positive entity. And so, if you think something over and over and over again, it almost becomes like there's love bubbles. Well, there's a pain bubble that turns into something dark, you know?
Right. That's well said. Michael, thoughts?
Yeah. So, when I go into these realms of the demons and stuff like that, I can see different entities. And I believe it goes back, like you were just talking about, Atlantis and, the Great Flood. So that was caused by these demons basically, trying to corner and control the world like I think they're trying to do right now.
To do right now.
It's a repeat. This time we're going to win out, but it's, still a process. So I think they've been around for tens of thousands of years. I think at one time we were very beautiful. We're going to rise in consciousness, and they invaded and basically shut us down and turned us back.
So to that point, the question does, are they the Nephilim, right? Because if you read the biblical scriptures, the Nephilim spirits were, as they died, they became what they call disincarnated entities. So, tormenting or I'm sorry, made to live in the material plane forever. They can't escape. So, it stands to reason if you're right, and I think you are. And obviously every day it seems like we become more and more right? But the things that are revealed, it seems like that's really what it is. And as you said, Rebecca, there's no way to quantify them. There's so many shapes and forms. There's so many names from different cultures. The great Pierre Sabak is, very, very clearly declined that there are names for these beings all up and down the angelic hierarchies. And there's so many of them. And then, we don't even know what else has come into this dimension or this realm and allied with them. Again, if you really think about this whole third dimensional physical realm, it's just duality of polarity. You've got the light and the dark, and you've got the dark serving a role and the light serving a role, and even the light becoming the dark and the dark becoming the light. It's just, when you multidimensionally think and you remove yourself from this third dimensional prism that we see things from in physical bodies, there is no light and dark outside of this, because again, it's duality. There's one side of the ever swinging pendulum and the other, and the one side becomes the other, right? So it's just you really have to multidimensionally perceive, like you do, Michael, when you remote view, what's really going on. And we're so limited as humans. Again, I call it that limited prism schism, where we're just seeing things in three dimensions and not thinking outside of that little sandbox of 3 dimensions. Even with our vision, right? We're so limited in what we can see. And I really do think that, like I said, this is a very big topic, one that deserves much greater explanation or exploration, amongst people like ourselves. And, I personally say now that we don't have to have fear. The fear cycle, which is obviously COVID-19 and the masks and the virus and all this nonsense, it's so overplayed at this point. If you still have fear about a virus that kills less than the seasonal flu, that's a statistical fact, then you are, again, down here. And you're really, really opening yourself up if you're not already inhabited. And that, brings up another question, which both of the authors say in the book that, and you guys know this, all of us have had these beings put thoughts into our mind. Imagine the times in your life where you're just happy-go-lucky, you know, having a good day, and all of a sudden some weird feeling comes into your mind about killing some animal or attacking some person for no apparent reason. And they swear, and again, they have a lot of, you know, empirical evidence from their interviewing patients and interviewing prison inmates that it's the voices or the flyers or the predators or whatever they are, that they can literally get into our minds and input thoughts. Do you guys, you know, I'm not crazy. You guys have had thoughts like that in your life, right? Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, that's often what they do is they push the thoughts into your mind of self-harm or harm against others, or just self-destruction.
Right.
Yeah. Don't go home to your kids, go to the bar and, you know, keep drinking, you know, or that self-loathing, you know, is there. And, you know, I literally saw someone over the course of many years, it was like seeing the addiction go on and on and on. And then and it was like the spirit, the soul, the person just became more and more like zombie-like, you know, spiritless, over time. And it's really sad.
So let me ask you a question. I just put the topic up, and I didn't want to forget it, and you guys can both talk about this. But I mean, I think we're all of the same agreement at this point now, knowing what we know. This is schizophrenia, right? I mean, this is really what schizophrenia is. If you really look at the classical clinical definition of schizophrenia, where they say it's, you know, you already said it earlier, Rebecca, MPD disorder, right? But schizophrenia is literally when you cannot keep your, you know, personality, your id connected. It's like you have multiple ones. So would you say, Rebecca, that that's what this really is, that this is a form of these spirits inhabiting that person's soul / you know, aura, and just deciding that they're going to own it?
Yeah, you know, you probably didn't watch this, but I'm, you know, female, watched Oprah, and she did this story years ago about this little girl that was 7 that had schizophrenia. And it was so bad, and she was so violent at times that the mom and dad had to have separate apartments to keep the children apart. And I went back and watched it today when I knew we were going to get on for this. And it was like, to me, it was like a little girl whose the veil is thin for her. And she was just hearing different voices and talking about them, and how some of them would just tell her to do evil things, like harm her sister or harm her mother or father. And to me, it was just 100% like, oh, this girl has entities. She's, you know, whatever you want to, mental diagnosis you want to call it. But the true problem is that she's able to hear and see things that the people around her can't. And she's 7. She doesn't know how to deal with that. Amazing.
One of the sections in the book talks about, and again, you guys know why, the entities hate children more than anything, because again, children are pure. They're literally of the highest vibration. They have not been dummied / poisoned by the Matrix. They have not been told their religion or told, you know, whatever else that they're, you know, we all brainwash our kids because we just indoctrinate them in the same way we were indoctrinated. But it's like they really hate the pure essence of children. And there's like a lot of little miniature stories inside the book of where like they're told, you know, to kill the children. So you talk about feeding off energy. Again, it's like vampiric, right? Like you feed off of a pure soul. Imagine the high or the energy, you know, suck that they get from doing that. So, I mean, you guys, this is just like so mind blowing. You know, we're obviously getting more people watching now because the debate ended, and I don't want to talk about the debate. But you know, Michael, you know, truthfully, like, how really important of a story is this to get this information out to more people? Because again, I want to end the show. We're not close to ending it, but I want to end the show again on strategies and tactics And again, we already know what the strategies and tactics are, but like, how important is it for people to become self-aware of this? Like you said earlier, Rebecca, you talked about like, really bad habits. Bad habits lead to these things happening to you. But Michael, in your opinion, like, how important is getting this topic out to the masses?
I think it's really important to start to look at it in yourself. And when you see it in yourself, then you once you've identified it, then you can start to see it in other people. So for me, we're talking about, drinking and stuff like that. Gin is the thing that would wreck me, would make me go mean, So and I didn't realize it at the time. So I had a girlfriend that loved to do martinis. So we did, I do a martini with her, gin, martini, and we'd always end up in a fight. And I was like, hey, what is going on?
And you don't even know how. You don't even know why.
Yeah.
You just end up in a fight.
But, I can drink a beer, champagne, whatever, nothing. But, and I'm like the nicest guy. But when I do gin, it's that vibration. Whatever that vibration is, does not work with me. So I don't do alcohol at all now. But definitely once I realized that, it took me a while, unfortunately,
right,
to figure that out.
Right.
But once I did, I was like, never doing gin again. So you have to start to see it in yourself. The things that trigger you. I would see things, and I get like crazy, on certain things. And I'm like, what is that? Because you don't want to be that way.
Right.
And some people just let it go. And it's like, oh, anger, that's a good thing. It's like, that's stupid. No, anger, fear, lower vibration. No, never want to be there, and teach people how to not go there. So you have to start to realize it, see it in yourself. Then you can see it in others, maybe even help them. But these vibrations are very, very important to start to recognize, how they wreck your life and how they attract possibly demonic forces to start to, talk to you in your head. And because a lot of us, like you're talking about, just have these like weird thoughts of like, where's that coming from?
Dude, as you said that, I thought, and we all know this, and you know this, Rebecca, and you've dealt with this clinically, but I mean, think of how many times we've driven down the road in our lives, wherever we are, and we see the insane, schizophrenic, MPD person, whatever, the homeless bum, carrying on conversations with invisible people. I mean, it just popped in my head as you were saying that, and it's like, boom, it clicked, and there it goes on the back of my neck. Mm-hmm. They are inhabited, and they are communicating with these spirits that are literally putting words in their head. Again, in the book, it's the voices. I mean, is it not that 100%, Rebecca?
I think it is. I definitely think it is. Just from everything I've seen. And even things that you wouldn't think. I've had 2 cases in my office. One specifically, I was working with a client who came for other, like personal development things, and she has epilepsy. And then after working with her for about a year, she admitted to me, because she knew, it came up in conversation, that I was open-minded to this stuff. And that's the thing too, is a lot of people suspect and know and hear these things, but they won't tell other therapists that they've had, because they don't think that concept or their belief or their sense that they have an entity attached to them is going to be responded to in a way where they're going to get some help from it, so they just don't tell these people. But she believes that her epilepsy is a result of the entity, the specific one attached to her. And then she knew of another woman who had the same story. And I was like, oh my God, I never thought about that being a connection. Now, I'm not saying that I could say from 2 cases that that's across the board a truth, but as soon as she said when she gets drunk, she's evil. And then when she gets drunk is when she has the epilepsy. It's right. Usually the day after she'll have the epileptic fit. So There's something going on there with that.
I mean, I would posit that if we could eliminate alcohol, and obviously that's a big if, the vibration of the planet would shift and skyrocket so fast that it would literally tip the balance, Michael. I mean, it would be, it'd be like that because, again, spirits, right? Like, look into the formation of alcohol, look into the companies that built it, into the profit center, look into like the prohibition days. I mean, there's so much research about, alcohol and abstention and then prohibition and all of the things it's led to. But I mean, again, you already said it, spirits, hard distilled liquor attracts these beings and makes you as a human being, which obviously is a normal human being, is not capable of murder or mayhem or all this nonsense. I mean, again, I would posit that most people who kill, not in defending a country or, in the service of military or whatever, but most people who commit murder are under the influence of these beings. Would you agree, Michael?
Oh, absolutely. And they'll admit it too. A lot of them say they don't even remember doing this stuff.
Right.
It's definitely happening, and something has triggered this being to come in, like we've been talking about the whole time. You invite them in some way, and then once they're in, you just start to, they take over your consciousness. And the only way to overcome that is definitely not go to these areas. Now, occasionally I'll do a glass of champagne in celebration. I don't think, a little bit here and there. I know people like to partake of some drugs, and it's the vibrational thing as well.
Right.
So some drugs are actually probably good for some people. And actually, we do want some people to be on some of these drugs because otherwise we're just out of control with their brains, So
to that point, by the way, MDMA now, clinical version MDMA is used for males and women too, military who suffer severe PTSD. That's what the number one form of therapy is now, and it's approved. Obviously, again, everything therapeutic, right? Testosterone is therapeutic. Any drug or any element or adjuvant, if used therapeutically, can definitely help people. Again, it's always the level of abuse versus therapeutic, and that's kind of like there's always a line in between. I didn't mean to hijack you or interrupt you, but there's no question that even plant medicine, right, for the right person, as you said, of the right vibration, can elevate things and can open up channels that normally would never be elevated. So it's like what is the statement they always say, like that it's a very small difference between a poison and a potion that enhances, right? So it's like it's always a level of dosage. But back to your point, I'm sorry I hijacked you right there.
No, that's beautiful. It was good interjection. So it's learning what those vibrational things are to bring your consciousness up. Ideally, you want to have you want to be in the place where you can control your own consciousness, because I get around people that are crazy, and I keep my consciousness a certain even keel. And like when I used to work security in the casino, everyone loved to have me come in because I'd come in all calm, and I'd oftentimes just everything got calm when I showed up. So you want to be in that environment all the time, like we keep talking about, and not get pulled out of it. But if like we're just talking about, if normally you're like really low, sometimes some of these drugs will help bring your conscience up. But I don't like to see people rely on them. Eventually, no. Like with Rebecca, or like Rebecca, and it's going to help you get to a higher level of consciousness through hypnosis or other means. That's ideally what you want.
So Rebecca, as the point says down there below, and again, this is the point that you and I and Michael have already made on various shows before, that the very reason that the majority of people in this planet right now, in this moment in time, that are down here below 100, in the vibrating in shame, guilt, apathy, despair, humiliation, it's from trauma, right? You've clearly disclosed that. It may not even been a trauma from this current physical incarnation. It could have been a past life. It could have been, again, the transgenerational, transpersonal. It could have been from your mom, or it could have been inherited from your dad. I mean, Michael, you think about like what we came from. We probably carried on a lot of the sins of our dad, right? I mean, it's just kind of who we are as beings. But Would you say, Rebecca, that it really does go back to healing the trauma, working with someone like you, addressing it, admitting it? And again, so many people cannot admit this. It's like, my good friend who I was with over the weekend, who I will not name right now, said, he's like, look, dude, the people that are voting for the leftist, radical left, demonic entities, it's not that they're not bad, that they're horrible people. It's just that they've invested in a belief system for so long that addressing that it's all wrong, they can't do it, right? They got that perfection complex. A lot of these people are highly educated, sophisticated people, but they can't change their paradigm of thought. It's a construct that they've invested in. And so, like, to admit that that's demonic and evil, well, they will never do that. So isn't it the same thing, Rebecca, with people who are traumatized? First, you have to be willing to accept and admit that you have a trauma.
Yeah. And I think also it's like people might know it, but then they just don't know how to clear it. It's like you can go through a lot of talk therapy, but that doesn't clear trauma on the level of your energy. I mean, sometimes when we've been, working on people with trauma, that's why I brought in someone who does Reiki, because it was like, it was in their bones. It was in their DNA, even if it happened to them. And, so you've got to find any way possible to raise your vibration. So if I'm entering into a situation, and I know, Michael, I'm sure you do this too, and I'm an empath. So what that means is I've just been brought up to feel other people's energy and emotions. My description of an empath is somebody who feels the world in 3D when everyone else feels it in 2D. So my old way of navigating through life would be to, enter into a room or a family situation or whatever and feel out the situation energetically. But then what was happening, it was lowering my vibration because I was tuning into people and then going to their level of energy. So if you really want to rise above this, you need to get the therapy or the hypnotherapy or whatever you need to do to clear the trauma and to clear your thought patterns or whatever's generating typically fear, right? Because fear is that low vibration that they're feeding off of. So if you can, and then I think a lot of what you're talking about in some of those people is they're indoctrinated into these fear-based ways of running their lives. And that's how they're encouraged to vote for this or do this, is based on fear.
Right. Well, religion's number one at that. You just hit the magic word. I mean, that is fear-based programming number one. Well, I mean, what's more fear-based than religion?
Yeah, right. So what I imagine doing in my mind is, if I'm going into a situation where I know it's low vibration because either someone's upset, someone's angry, someone's very fear-based on a regular basis, and I know them and I know that's how they are, or I even going into, like, I love to go hear live music, and a lot of places around where I live, it's at a bar. And it's fine when you show up, and then later in the night, it's like you can literally just see the entities teeming around these people as they're drinking more and more, and just the auras are weakening more and more. But if I walk into a situation, I'm just like pushing out the light. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to go to their vibration. They can come to mine. They can come to that higher vibration. The stronger vibration in the room will dominate. When you say, Michael, I mean, that's how it works in my mind. It's like, I'm not going to go to their vibration as an empath anymore. I'm going to push the light out, and then they can join me or not. So
yeah, that's beautiful. The remote influencing that we talked about before, you're pushing out the energy fields like Rebecca's talking about, and it has an influence on your area. And I've done it in combat zones where I push out that influence and influences the environment, so there's no more attacks. So it's we all have these abilities. You just have to believe in it and start to utilize them. But yeah, in a net, like, that's crazy. What Rebecca's talking about. It's like these dark entities. It's almost like a shark.
Right.
You bleed into the water, and sharks for a mile away know it.
You're chumming them. You're chumming for them.
Your vibration starts to go bad, weak. You draw the spirits by drinking the spirits. So
totally, man. Are you guys okay to go another 20 to 30 minutes answering questions and talking about stories? Because I know a lot of people have really good stories to talk about. And, first off, again, thanks to everybody watching. That Tracy Joe person's cool. There's a lot of amazing people that watch the show. Veronica Vela has great comments. But so, yeah, let me just encourage all of you guys who have watched the show. First off, for the people that came late, the book is called An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower. It's only 153 pages. It's very, very simple to read. It's a page turner. It'll blow your mind. I mean, like the first 40 pages are like, my God. I mean, when you talk about the guy, Michael, I don't know if you didn't share. I know you know, Rebecca, but there was a psychiatrist whose name was Dr. Walter Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
The guy lived from 1895 to 1972, and he was responsible for 3,500 lobotomies. He used an ice pick and performed frontal lobotomies on people. And are you ready for this? Talk about a demon in physical form. Mm-hmm. His comment was he relieved thousands from what he called the burden of consciousness. Now, here's the scary part. Again, proving that psychiatry is run by these things. He was never even given a slap on the wrist. In fact, he is recognized as a pioneer and major contributor to the field of psychiatry. 3,500 ice pick lobotomies, relieving people of their consciousness, their soul. Mm. So again, I highly encourage people to read that book and become more involved in understanding this. And as Michael said earlier, we all have these things in us. The lower you vibrate, the more alcohol you drink, the more sugar you consume, the less love you provide and give and send out, the more open you are for these things coming into your life. It's literally that simple. I mean, the last chapter of this book talks about how, to talk about this, you're going to be vilified. They're going to laugh at you. Nobody's going to take you seriously for this, but this is very serious stuff. I mean, Michael talks about this every day. You've been dealing with this, Rebecca, for close to 30 years of your, professional life. This is not a joke. For people that are watching this on the rerun, please watch this from the beginning. This is not a joke. More and more of this is going to come out, Michael, right? I mean, as time goes on, way more of this stuff is going to come out because people are going to not be afraid to share their experiences. There's guys in our group right now, I won't mention their names, who have battled alcoholism and have personally told me that when they were really at their lowest point as alcoholics, that they heard these voices. They were told to do certain things. So again, everyone has dealt with this at some various point in their life. So again, to all of you guys that are watching, please, share your stories, ask questions for these guys. There was a good one. Here's a good question for you guys from Golden Striker. Let me put it up on the screen. He says, is it possible that these beings are an aspect of our lower vibratory thought forms that we're confronted by the reflections of before transcending them? That's a great question. Michael, what do you think about that?
We all have thoughts or vibration. That's a possibility because just like we were kind of discussing before, as far as thought forms, they go out. If you have negative thought forms, they create something, so that's an excellent question. And that's definitely a possibility. Although I think mostly it's from negative beings inhabiting us. But that's I think that's proven that we actually do create beings, from some of these ancient religions. They have these TV shows where they, everybody's worshiping this one being, and it's created through thought forms. Yeah. So it's interesting. That's an excellent question.
Yeah, great question. Tracy Joe says it's really a good comment. She says it's so true. It's so important that it's more important than the debate. It is. It really is. I mean, these are our kids. If we can't warn our children about these things, they're just going to carry on after us, and they're going to deal with the same experience of living inside the matrix, getting potentially hooked on alcohol or drugs or partying or sugar. I mean, again, nobody talks about this, but sugar is the most addictive substance on the planet. You know, I've seen studies, you know, in my optimization world of what sugar does to everything in the body. There's nothing worse. I mean, why do you think people become morbidly obese? Because they literally are addicted to sugar. They cannot process the insulin. They crash their insulin receptors, and all of a sudden, before you know it, all they can do to survive is eat sugar or high glycemic food. So it's the same thing. These beings get us into these vile, you know, obsessive compulsive habits. And then before you know it, we're slaves to that. And then we're slaves to them. So again, to all the people that are watching this, came on late. Again, the book is An Amazing Journey in the Psychotic Mind. I already put a link in the stream chat. Please buy it. You know, it's like $14 or $13. It's brand new on Amazon. Again, you'll read it in a day and a half and you'll be enlightened. I love James Monroe. He says, there you go. Mystery of the Crazy Homeless just solved. They're possessed. They're not possessed. And they, you know, they make a very classic distinction. You can talk a little bit more about it, Rebecca, but they do make a distinction. They're like, look, you're not possessed when you hear these voices. You know, the difference. And by the way, I should mention this. If you guys have not seen the show on Netflix, which evidently came out last year, I don't watch TV, so I wouldn't know, but Evil. Have you guys seen the show Evil on Netflix yet? Oh my God, dude. One of my friends was like, dude, you got to watch this. It's chapter and verse of the things that we talk about. So again, whoever directed this show is putting in all of the stories that we already know to be true in our esoteric realms and putting it in a wrapped up show that evidently it ran its first season. I just finished it last night. It was like 13 episodes. And you guys, it is phenomenal. Like both of you guys have to watch it right away. It's crazy. There's one episode where they talk about the forms of the forms of possession. And I'm watching this and I'm like, this is no way. This is like fiction. This is like, they're just chapter and verse putting it out there. And as you said, Michael, we are at a time right now where evil is everywhere. It is everywhere. It's unchained. It's unkept. It's unleashed. It's in everything in the programming of the modern day. It's everywhere. Spider webs. That's what it's like. Yep, there's a good one. It's true, as you said, Michael. If you stay in love vibration, they cannot attach to you. They even talk about in the book that without giving away, like because they have a strategy of, they say to read Psalm 23. If a person reads Psalm 23, whether they're already under the yoke of these things or experience them, they instantly leave. I'll give you one tip of that. That's in the book. But it's like you said, Rebecca, I mean, doing spiritual self-help, again, sending out love, again, just, doing things that a higher vibrational being would do. These beings cannot suck your energy. Why would they be around you if you can't feed them? Right?
Yeah. And one thing it makes me think of too is not everything that lowers your vibration is like something you ingest, like alcohol or maybe certain types of drugs or sugar. It's things that you do that would perpetually create a low vibration for you emotionally. And I've actually seen that with pornography. It's like this cycle of wanting to watch it, getting the high off of it, that literally does change your brain chemistry. But then the cycle afterwards, it's actually like binge eating, where then there's this guilt and this shame. And then you do it over and over and over time. And then that energy around you of guilt and shame just keeps building and building. And then I think they, in part, feed off of your guilt and shame that you're going through. And maybe it's something else, some other habit that you do that you feel ashamed of or bad about.
Yeah. Here's actually a really good comment. Lydia, she said, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. The one right below it. She says they're acting out more present because we are shifting into higher frequencies and they are trying to piggyback on people into the higher dimension, hanging on for dear life. That's probably true. Michael, you've talked a lot about that. Talk a little bit about that. Yeah,
that's an excellent one, Angel. So we're seeing, with the presidential election cycle, they're trying to create this chaos. We're seeing it with the COVID. They're trying to create the chaos with the COVID. They're keeping people in their homes. people committing suicide. They're not even releasing all those numbers. It's just out of control. So they love to create chaos, and then they try to bring order out of that chaos. It's one of the patterns that the evil ones do, and you have to just recognize that and not let yourself get caught up in it. And over time, I've obviously seen this in combat zones. You have to maintain, what we keep talking about, that beatific, attitude, and just I've seen so many people, keep that attitude, and it's just amazing. They've been, inspirational to me. And, reading Psalms and stuff like that are excellent things. Mantras that are positive,
right. Absolutely,
anything like that.
Yeah, they give, and by the way, Leslie, let me just put this up there. She said, I wish you would bring Dr. Marzinsky on. We are bringing Dr. Marzinsky on, and we're bringing on Sherry Swiney, his co-author, and they are going to be on a show with us in the future. They're very excited to do it. They actually gave me permission to talk about this, to set them up so you know that they will be coming on and we will be talking to them. And honestly, I expect that show to just change the internet, because these people's stories are going to be absolutely mind-blowing. And again, I mean, so many people don't read today, right? But I just keep throwing it out there. Please buy their book. It will absolutely captivate you, and you will then become much more informed to help people in your current personal life. Because look, every one of us right now knows somebody affected by these things. Absolutely. You wouldn't have to think very far to find somebody, affected by these beings. And again, even casual hard liquor drinkers are dealing with these beings, Michael. I mean, I've never been an alcoholic, and I've never really drank other than once in my whole life. I got drunk, but I've seen it, right? Like, I've seen people, men, strong alpha men, drink and become demonic and become absolutely insane, where you literally have to choke them out, or they're going to cause, harm to other people who have absolutely no interest in harming them, or even a threat. So again, we know that this is what's going on. You already talked about it very well. I'm just going through this. Let's see. They're all saying, please, Jay, talk about the debate. Ask Michael. No. Yes, Trump did take control, but he took control a long time ago. Michael Jaco, love bubbles.
Thank you, Julie. Yes, definitely.
Heavy energies out there, absolutely, right now. And by the way, we're still in Mercury retrograde right now, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My sleep has been a little bit disturbed recently. It's weird because when I don't know about it, it's better, because then when I know we're retrograde, I probably think more about it. Well, let me just ask you, Michael, real quick. I always do. We wouldn't be fair, and I know you're doing an amazing job to your audience, talking to people, and so many of your audience is my audience, and there are probably a lot of us watching right now. But, you've been forecasting weird shit, darkness, whatever, something on election day. So this is my opinion, and you guys can share your opinions, but my still interpretation of what's going to happen is I agree. But I still see, I think, and again, it's just my opinion, but I think that Trump is way ready for this. I think they've anticipated what the left, the dark radical, dark demonic, demon crack, whatever you want to call them, is going to do. And I feel like there's going to be a military force that's already put in place, probably plain clothes, probably they'll look like mercenaries or mercs or whatever, that is going to come in to these big cities, and they're going to remove the leadership. And then, as Trump said, even today on the debate, which I watched for about 30 minutes, he said, look, the U.S. military is going to be administering the vaccine. That's like code for the U.S. military, getting on the streets, actively engaged in whatever, anarchy these forces create. I mean, that's my opinion, but that's my take. Do you think I'm way off, and that we're going to be dealing with some real serious attacks on the Constitution physically and violently, and I'm too positive and optimistic?
No, I actually thought that we'd be already seeing it. So I get reports that from major cities that special forces guys are already doing some stuff. So I think they're already taking out leadership for some of these things in the big cities that were going to be doing some of this stuff. New York, LA, we've already seen them. active, and I wouldn't doubt that there's some more stuff going on, because these guys know how to operate, you know, in the dark of night and take care of business. Been there, done that. I've done it in the big cities before, actually. Training, not you know, for real in our big cities, but there is that going on, because what I saw is, like I just said, you know, huge problems all the way up to the election, and we're not seeing that now. So things have definitely changed. Although I still see, you know, and that thing that we were talking about as far as election, I've been saying it, you know, for a couple months or so now.
Right.
That thing that maybe I was seeing is that maybe Joe's not part of that election.
Right. Well, I mean, to that point, let's examine this for a second. And let me go back to examine your stuff. And we're not ignoring you, Rebecca. To that, again, quantum physics, right? We create our own reality. You have more than anyone, both of you, but Michael especially, because I started talking to Michael before you, Rebecca, you have said that people are waking up en masse. So maybe, again, the whole quantum aspect of reality, maybe, and you know, now we're into our friend Neville Goddard, maybe this quantum awakening, this mass awakening of sleepers has changed the timeline, Michael. And now it's just a script. It's literally they're hanging out the darkies to dry. And this whole thing with Biden and, you know, the thing that's come out with Hunter Biden. And then, I mean, you guys, a bombshell came out tonight. You know, it was obviously an hour before the debate. But, you know, his Hunter's ex-Navy business partner is singing like a canary. So by tomorrow and the day after, there's a likelihood, Michael, that Biden's going to have to resign. I mean, I'm not, you know, a right-wing conservative Republican honk here. I'm looking at the obvious. I mean, there is going now to be stuff out. The Senate Investigative Committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee, they're already talking to this guy. So something is going to happen, I would assume, in the next 7 to 10 days that's going to literally put a gun to the head of the Joe Biden presidency. Do you agree?
Yeah, it's there. I've been predicting on my show for a couple nights now that it could be a one-horse race. And, you know, you have to be careful how you put it out there, because I've been taken down a couple times already. But I think there's that possibility. I see that very strongly. And we talk about that, you know, that tipping point. The tipping point's been hit. I think it hit about a week and a half ago. There's more of consciousness that's on the positive side now than there's ever been probably since the fall, you know, that we talked about. So it's pretty impressive. What do you think, Rebecca? What
are your thoughts, Rebecca?
I've felt all along something was going to happen to Biden that would X him out, and then somebody else is going to step forward. But, you know, it's weird, because back when, I think maybe the last time we talked, it felt like there were two timelines still really competing for each other.
Right.
So I'm prepared for civil unrest on the day of the election or the day after the election.
Right.
And I've felt all along that, you know, that Trump isn't going to just walk away from this if something, you know, drastic was happening he's going to be there for people no matter what his official title is my feeling.
Yeah. Whatever is going to happen, to me, it's all scripted. You know, Michael, you might even be right. You know, the QAnon story, whether it's disinformation designed to awaken people, which it probably is. I mean, again, there's always truth with error and everything in the Matrix. There's so much of it now. If you really look at things for the way they started or initiated in 2017 up to now, like, it's just right there. It's like staring you in the face. So something is coming where we're all going to be like, wow, ooh, ah, right? Again, you know, a lot of people in our groups are talking about it. It's like a movie. It's like a Hollywood movie with like an engineered ending of the good guys, you know, beating the bad guys. But again, so many people in the United States right now on the left, especially, and of course there's right-wing people that are like that though too, but are just so asleep. And again, they're so committed to their methodology and their ideology of what they believe in, and they can't change because changing would destroy their echo chamber that they've lived in their whole life. Right. So it's like they're so committed to keeping that philosophy that they can't even look at anything arbitrary. I mean, again, to us, we laugh because, again, it's just good versus evil. There is nothing else. But like to the people that are so entrenched in the left practices, and then, of course, as I've said, a lot of them have Trump derangement syndrome, orange mad bad. They don't even care about anything but getting Donald Trump out. He inflames them. It's so weird. I mean, again, I've said this before, and again, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm an anarchist, if anything. I want a totally changed world of high vibration beings. But if you really looked at Trump's record in 2016 to now, he's the greatest president in the history of the United States. He has done so many amazing things for the world, for the economy, making peace, not bombing people. We've not been in wars. I mean, it's incredible. And they still attack him like he's like a pauper, in the street drinking adrenochrome. I mean, it's insanity how crazy the world has shifted. But, just to end the show, as we always do on a good measure, we're, but 7 to 8 minutes left because I don't want to keep you guys longer than 90 minutes. Like, I'll go to you first, Rebecca. Like, what should people do who had no awareness or familiarity with the topic that we talked about tonight, who then watch the show and then, become introspective and be like, wow, my husband or my aunt or my sister or my children or whatever, are probably suffering from this. What can they do, in your opinion?
Definitely get educated, read the book. I don't even know if Edith Fiore's book is still available, Unquiet Dead, but there's other books out there. Like you said, the one, what about Mind Parasites?
Yep.
And, there is some information out there, and, do anything you can do to raise your vibration or maybe to help that person raise their vibration, so, and if they have trauma, to me personally, I'm obviously clearly biased, but hypnotherapy, Reiki, any energy work to clear the stories, clear the memories, but then you also have to clear the emotion and the energy that's held in your cells, in your physical body, in your aura as well. So personally, I think Reiki and hypnosis is an amazing combination. So
that's beautiful. Rebecca, please tell people how they can work with you right now, just on that point.
Yeah, they can check out charlestonhypnosiscenter.com. And then my more spiritual, personal site is RebeccaTaylorShaw.com.
I just put both of them in. And by the way, before you go, Michael, I just want to say this because there's been some good points. Again, we all know that Trump is not the best person, right? He's a bombastic, narcissistic, egoic, billionaire. But again, he was chosen to clean this planet up, in my opinion. I know you guys share my opinion, by whomever, whether it was galactic forces, white hats, it doesn't matter. He was in a no-win situation. So again, ask yourself, if you don't like Trump, okay, you can't argue his success as a president before COVID. Okay. We all know COVID is a giant conspiracy by the same elites trying to destroy the middle class and do all these other things they're doing. But would you seriously, if you're educated, again, I'm hoping that our audience is highbrow enough to be educated of the debate. Of the issues. Would you vote for a president who is literally being hijacked by radical, extreme, leftist, Bolshevik, totalitarian, tyrannical terrorists? That's what we're looking at if Joe Biden becomes president of the United States. It's already, his vice president candidate is one of the worst human beings ever. Her record in the state of California, what she did to black men, what she did to just pretty much anybody in the system, in the penal system. She is a demonic force. And if you're not aware of this kind of stuff and you're anti-Trump or, Trump is owned by the Jews in Israel, I've seen some of these comments, then you're just kind of lost. Because if we really have a presidency with Joe Biden, we all have problems. I mean, it is as simple as that. I mean, if you can't see that, then man, there's no help for you. Michael, your final thoughts.
Yes, I mean, you look at the two different groups that are out there right now, and the people that are pretty much in that love vibration that really sincerely want to help people and that have been helping people, and then you, like you just described, the people that are, you know, pretty much negative in their comments, the way they attack people, and you know what you know, their performance. Joe Biden's been around for 47 years, but no one can say, you know, what he's done. And, you know, I really don't care about his performance. What I care about is people out there right now, because just like Julie says, the heavy energies, lately spiritual battle going on. So the spiritual battle is going on around us, and we have to stay in those higher vibrations. And if you don't maintain your consciousness in a higher state, which is very simple, I mean, you can think of yourself as love a light in the world. You know, that simple mantra keeps you in that higher state of consciousness. Anything that takes you up there, and you can be surrounded, like I have been, with people, you know, killing, you know, everybody around me and trying to kill me. Right. And I stayed in that higher vibration. You maintain, you can do it. So yeah, in my courses, I teach all this stuff. You can get into my stuff with Unleash Intuition Secrets. Lots of different courses in there on every aspect that we're talking about right here, and it's very, very valuable. And with Rebecca, we just did a live past life regression. It's on my YouTube channel. You can go check that out. It's super popular. So I'm really excited that people are really getting into this information like we're talking about right now. Yeah. But before, you know, like a couple of years ago, you know, there'd be like maybe one or two people, you know, eating popcorn and watching us talk. You know, thousands of people getting into this, you know, tens of thousands. It's beautiful.
Yeah. No, it is a beautiful thing. And I have massive love in my heart for both of you guys for, you know, doing this show and kind of a moment's notice, and really just having the courage and the bravery and really the audacity, you know, to come online and talk about a subject that very, very few people will talk about. Okay. And, you know, Michael, thanks to you. And of course, Rebecca, for putting up a grid of protection. And again, I would ask all of you guys, you know, ask for assistance. As we always say, you know, the angels, the good guys, the benevolent beings are literally around us. We have guardian angels around us at all time. You have to ask for their assistance, you know, pray to them, you know, say an invocation, have a mantra, like Michael said. You know, obviously I recommend that you meditate, you know, you contemplate, you go into nature and you ground, you know, you have a peaceful practice, an introspective practice where you do the inner work. You go inside. Everything is internal. Okay. I always say, you know, to go beyond, you must go within, right? None of us are going to expand consciously until we decide to learn about mind silence and learn again to meditate or to contemplate or to become introspective, or even if it's just going into nature with your dog or by yourself and just being silent. You know, that statement, silence is golden. Well, silence is where everything happens. That's where knowing comes in, when you become aware of, you know, all the thoughts that you have. I mean, again, you know, this shows a perfect example of this. Like silence, they can't bother you. They're not the drunk monkey inside your mind telling you to do things or distracting you or whatever they're telling you to do when you're in that low vibrational field. So again, you know, we say it all the time, you know, be in love, be in light, you know, be courageous, kind, caring, concerning. You know, those are the things that you have to do as a spirit being, because again, as I always say, we are not these physical bodies. We are so much more. We are spiritual beings having a physical existence. And until you recognize that, you're never going to recognize or realize what is important. And again, what is important is creating love and pushing love into the ether, which you do as a spiritual being. You guys, I love you guys. I mean, I so appreciate you guys coming on. Again, you guys support both of these amazing people. Book a session with Rebecca. My wife and I are going to do that as soon as we get done with this move, which is, you know, not ending anytime soon. Of course, you know, watch Michael's YouTube channel, you know, invest in his courses. You know, his link is up there right now. You haven't changed anything, right, Michael? That's the same link?
Yes, same link. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, guys, you know, and you know, and obviously, most importantly, share this conversation tonight, because this was a phenomenal conversation. And again, a topic that very few people are, you know, willing to talk about. And, you know, don't be in fear. There's nothing to be fearful of. Again, they cannot mess with you unless, as Michael said very elegantly early in the show, unless you're in the fear vibration. And there's no reason to be in fear. You know, be of service, be kind, be loving, send out love bubbles, do all those things, and they have no power over you. So again, you know, guys, final thoughts. Do you guys, anything else you want to say before the show ends?
I'm good.
Yeah, thanks.
You're good?
Thanks.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we'll be back next week. As far as I understand it, on Monday night, we'll come up with a topic, but let me just end the show by saying what you guys all know to come and love from me. Raise your vibration to optimize your love creation. We'll see you guys soon. You guys hang out for a second. Thank you, guys.